Hello friends, it's Kayla. It's time again for our annual tradition of spending the month of January reading booktuber favorites from the year prior. So the goal of this is to find booktubers who have the most similar taste to me and reading some of their favorites and seeing if they are my favorites. The first third of the video is going to be me watching and reacting to favorites videos, and then after that the vlog will begin. I have 15 open spots. That's how many books I think I can reasonably read in the amount of days I've allotted for the video. And here I have a playlist of 80 videos that I need to get through. I have done a little bit of prep work. So when some of the videos came out throughout the last month, I have scrubbed them just to see if I recognize any book titles that I know that I've read and loved, trying not to pay attention to anything else that the booktuber has held up. And then I've organized all of these videos by who I think has the most similar taste to me, who mentioned the most amount of books. I think it's going to be like a threshold of 5. If anybody has 5 or more books in common with me, then I need to add something from their video into my TBR. Every time I do this video series, I add a different challenge for myself. Sometimes it's if a book is mentioned more than once, I absolutely have to read it. This year, in the name of getting through my physical TBR, I think I'm going to commit to, if a book shows up that is already on my TBR, even if there's other options to choose from, I have to pick the one that is here. I can read more than one from any booktuber as well. I'm building this TBR for me. It's not just completely at random. I am going to curate it and pick things that I actually think I'm going to like, but yeah, I need to read it if I see something I own. So let's walk through these videos one by one and count how many we have in common, and then see what else they have in store for me. We're starting with Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, who was also on my list last year.
Hi everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin.
I'm not going to show you their entire list, but I am going to tally up anything that shows up that I have in common with them.
But that's Confessions by Kaneem Renato.
Okay, that's one. We read that for my book club together.
The Disaster Tourist by Yun Cohen. And Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. We have a granddad who has Alzheimer's, and we are going through pretty much the end of his life. I'm putting this down, don't fall please.
Yes!
But I have to high-five this cover every single time I say it. Middle Game by Shona Maguire. Freshwater by Akweke Emezi.
That's 3.
The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin.
4.
Finley Donovan is killing it.
5.
It's A Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson.
Oh, 6.
And then also Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
7. Okay, so Gavin and I had 7 in common, and there's a bunch for me to choose from, but taking out any of the manga, YA, and middle grade, this is a hard pick because they're all intriguing in their own way, but I think I'm gonna keep it safe and stay with the shortest one, which is the one that's gonna make me cry. Obviously I'm gonna pick the one that's gonna make me cry because then you can watch me cry. Next up we have Riley, who's been in I think every episode of this series.
My favorite books that I read in all of 2022, Winstead's thrillers. The first one is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife.
That's one in common for sure.
And then we have my favorite of the two, and that is The Last Housewife.
I haven't read The Last Housewife yet, but it's on my TBR for a different video, so I can't choose it for this.
All right, next we have The Push by Ashley Audrain.
I didn't realize she had read that this year. Technically, that's not on my TBR shelf. It's in the TBR closet. I know a lot of people want me to read that. I know it was on people's favorites last year and I didn't pick it.
Slewfoot by Brahm.
That's 2.
The Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Grant.
3.
Woman Eating by Claire Coda.
Ooh, that's 4.
Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry.
And 5.
My all-time favorite book of the year, Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher.
That's 6. I heard of that one because of Riley. And there's only actually, the Push is my only option anyway. I've read everything else in her list. Next up, I want to do Lexi because she just posted her video. I haven't even scrubbed it. So let's see what I'm in store for here.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The only reason I'm doing my 2022 favorites this early on in the year is for Kayla from BooksandLala. Not that I think I'm gonna be featured in that video, but on the slight...
Listen, I already knew that because I talked to her live about it, but she always puts out her favorites video so late. I'm so excited.
So let's start with the honorable mentions. I am not going to be giving you summaries for the honorable mentions, but I did just wanna kind of show you the small stack of books.
I count honorable mentions in favorites lists, so let's see.
Is Neon Gods by Katie Robert, Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston.
Okay, that's 1.
My favorite adult contemporary literary fiction that I loved but just didn't make the cut was Sirens and Muses, and this is by Antonia Angres. Finley Donovan is killing it, and this is by El Casamano.
2.
These Fleeting Shadows, and this is a YA thriller, I think with some horror elements.
Do I own that?
It's My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix.
That's 3.
House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This book is wild.
Did I even know you read that? Okay, that's 4. I only need 1 more and she's on the list.
Where the Drowned Girls Go, and this is by Shauna Maguire.
That almost made my list. Absolutely a 5-star.
Number 2 is more of a genre, and I have 3 books for it, and I know that's cheating, okay? And I think they all encompass my new favorite genre, and that is cozy fantasy. Tied for number 2 is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and finally Nettle and Bone by T. King Fisher.
Okay, so Lexi and I had 6 in common, and I have like 5 things to choose from. I want to lean towards adult things, so it's Sirens and Muses, but I have read from Kate Alice Marshall before, so maybe I could read the first chapter of these Fleeting Shadows and see how it goes. Moving on to Katie.
And today we're going to talk about the best books I read in 2022. It's the Veronica Speedball series by Deanna Raybourn.
Okay, that's 1.
It's Confessions by Kanae Minato. And I read this because I was actually on Kayla's Literally Dead book club.
That's 2.
Of course is Slewfoot by Brahm.
That's 3 for me.
Number 4 is also going to be an entire series, and that's the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman, but my favorite is the second book, which is The Man Who Died Twice. It's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Tinder's the Flesh by Augustine de Basterica.
Yes, that's 4.
My best book of 2022, Notes on an Execution by Dania Kakofka.
And that's 5. I have read everything that she just listed. And anything that I didn't just show you, I gave 3 stars. And all I have to choose from is the Thursday Murder Club and My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa I have no interest in. I know it's been recommended to me. I'm not reading it. But I do have this. It's right here. Let's move swiftly along to Mayana because there's no way we don't have 5 in common.
Today I'm going to be talking about my best books of 2022. The Raven Boys.
Yes! So what a way to kick it off.
Number 17 is The Pause.
Yes!
If BookTube hates the book and Kayla loves it, I know I'm gonna fucking eat it up.
That's 2.
Big Little Lies.
That's 3.
A Dowry of Blood.
And 4.
The ninth book I have is called Finna. This book is everything that Horror Store by Grady Hendrix wanted to be. This store has a portal that opens every few years, and her grandma wandered into that portal.
Give me 1 more so I can pick that because that sounds interesting.
Vanessa Jared's Got a Man. They were just so fucking cute, and it was just like sexy and quick. The third book I have on this list is Full Moon Once by Ashley Winstead.
That's 5. And I have a handful of things to choose from. I think I'm gonna pick up both Finna and the Vanessa Jared one because I do want to pick something that's weird because our weird tastes align, but also we had 2 romances in common, and Mayana is the reason that I read another romance this year and loved it, so I just want to take one of her romance recommendations. Okay, continuing the list of people who I always know have favorites in common with me, let's go to Gabby.
So I wanted to just take a second to mention
Gabby always has a really large honorable mention section too, so we'll count those.
Comfort Me with Apples.
Fun.
I loved The Butcher by Jennifer Hilliard, All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata, Foe by Ian Reid, and then also Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Number 15 has got to be Crossroads by Laurel Hightower.
3.
Number 11 is going to be Daphne by Josh Mallerman.
4.
The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, and So Happy for You by Celia Lasky.
That's 5.
Notes on an Execution.
And 6.
My number 1 favorite book that I read this year is definitely We Spread by Ian Reid.
And 7. Loved that. Okay, I think there was around 10 things to choose from, but I do have Foe on my TBR shelf, so I need to pick this one. Considering there was another Ian Reid on her favorites, it was also on my favorites, like this is the perfect opportunity to read this. Though I want to pick The Dead Romantics and I want to read All Roads Lead to Here. Let's move to my friend Naomi. And I already know something that's going to be on her favorites, so if we do have 5, I know that I'm going to pick The Honeys, which she has been directly recommending to me all year. So let's confirm.
My favorite books of 2022. The first one is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill.
That's 1.
Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Casamano.
That's 2.
The It Girl by Ruth Ware.
Ooh, that's 3. She was on my live show for The It Girl. I love when book club books go so well.
The Honeys by Ryan Lasala. This is a horror, young adult horror book. Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie.
That's 4.
Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez.
And 5.
Coming in at number 2, I have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkinson. Love this book so much. Coming in at number 1 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin.
Naomi is giving me too many options. Oh my gosh. I am intrigued by Lessons in Chemistry. I want to read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And Black Cake also is intriguing. But I do have to pick the Honeys. So I'm officially picking the Honeys. Next, we've got Ashley. She had me reading 2 books in last year's version of this video and I loved them both, so let's see what we've got this time.
Really wanted the top 10 books to represent my reading interests across all of the things I read. Literary fiction / contemporary fiction. Unlikely Animals by Annie Hartnett. I like to read these realistic stories that have a little bit of magic sprinkled in. The Island by Adrienne McKinty. The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor.
There's one.
This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno.
And 2.
Crossroads by Laurel Hightower.
3.
Confessions by Kanae Minato.
4.
The We Spread by Ian Reid.
And 5. I think I only had like a couple to choose from. Considering some other things that Ashley included in her favorites that I gave a lower rating, I want to lean towards the literary, like slightly magical one because that is what I read in the past. Recommended by Ashley, rather than going for like the thrillers or horror that can be a little bit hit or miss between the two of us. I don't think I've heard of Unlikely Animals, but let's just go for it. Now let's move on to some new faces who I haven't had in this series before, who I'm newly subscribed to or I found because of their favorites video. We've got Kenya.
It is time for my end of the year list. Comfort Me with Apples.
That's 1.
Local Woman Missing.
And 2.
Monday is Not Coming. With the Fire on High.
Yes. 4.
In the Dream House.
And that's 5. Okay, I need to start paying attention to what else she mentions.
The Intimacy Experiment. The Dating Playbook. So this book is the second book in the Boyfriend Project series.
I do own this. Okay, that's getting added to the TBR, but what else do you have? I wasn't expecting that.
Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl. I loved everything about this book. Sorrow and Bliss. Charming as a Verb by Ben Felipe. I love this book. I love this book.
Okay, 5 in common. I do have a few to choose from here, but The Dating Playbook is the one on my TBR. I have read from Ben Felipe before, so part of me wants to add that, but me and YA Contemporary, I don't know if we're really getting along. I'm trying not to get too ambitious here. Next up, I have Summer, whose channel I'm new to, but I think I saw her Instagram post first, and I was surprised by how much we had in common, and so let's watch.
Hi, it's Summer, and these are my favorite books of 2022. A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone.
I could really use a wintry rom-com right now.
This is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing.
All right, there's the first one.
Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti.
I love how much Comfort Me with Apples is showing up.
After that, I have Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison.
I have this one. I really need to read it before winter is over. Let's get to 5. Let's make sure we get to 5.
Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield.
That's 3.
Bunny by Mona Awad.
And 4.
Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry.
And 5.
Is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager.
Oh, and 6. Favorite book of the whole year. Okay, now there are some things intriguing here. We had 6 in common. The Cartographer sounds interesting. A couple holiday romances. There's some like cozy fantasy, lighter things. But I do own Lovelight Farms. My husband got this for me for Christmas. Next up, we've got another Gabby. This one was just freshly posted, so reacting for the first time together.
My favorite books that I read in 2022. The Change by Kirsten Miller.
There's one.
The Family Game by Catherine Studman.
That's on my TBR.
Confessions by Kanae Minato.
Confessions again. That's 2.
Is Crossroads. Once again, this is a book that deals with very sensitive subject matter. Then we have Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen.
5.
The Between by Tanana Reeve-Dew. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno.
Oh my gosh, that's 7. Okay, 7 in common. There's a couple to choose from, but Gabby's list included a couple horror books that I really disliked, so I think it's smart to go with a thriller instead. Very happy to try out The Family Game. Now we have Tatiana, who I think was one of the first ones to put out their favorite. So this was a long time ago that I scrubbed this. Don't remember anything in it.
Let's dive right in. No Exit by Taylor Adams.
1.
Juba by Walter Dean Myers. 5th place, we have Marry It by Nat Cassidy.
Ooh, I would love to read Mary.
Ring Shout by Peta Jelly Clark.
2.
Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. In second place, They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This book, The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas.
5. All right, we hit the 5 threshold again. I'm easily picking Mary because I wanted to read that in the Goodreads Choice Awards and it just didn't show up, but that sounds like a good pick. I also saw it somewhere else that we'll talk about in just a second. The last one at the top of my list is somebody I just found recently, Sean?
Hi, my name is Sean and welcome back to the chaos that is Shani and Books. Know My Name by Chanel Miller.
I know this was on a lot of people's favorites lists last year and I just didn't get a chance to pick it up and include it. Let's make sure we have 5 first before I start building the TBR.
Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey.
1.
They Never Learn by Lane Fargo.
2. Love seeing this on people's lists.
Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour.
3. Love Watch Over Me. I don't see enough people talk about it.
Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn.
There's 4.
Another book from the same author, The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn.
And 5.
Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson.
I lost track. Is this 5 or 6?
7 Days in June by Tia Williams.
7?
Finley Donovan is Killing It.
Oh my gosh, that's 8.
By Ella Cosimano. Now we are at my top book. It is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez.
And 9. Wow. Okay. What a mix of genres. I loved that so much. This tops my entire list. The 9 in common. There are a couple intriguing things I could choose from, but I am gonna go with Know My Name. I'm pretty sure it's still in stock at my local library where I borrowed it from last time and then gave it back. So that was 13 booktubers who have 5 or more books in common with me. Then I need to head over to Instagram really quickly because I know this is reading booktuber favorites, but I'm also including some bookstagrammers like I do every time. I have some friends on here who read really similarly to me who don't make bookish content on YouTube, and I want to make sure I highlight them as well. So we have Brandon, who we have so many favorites in common. If you combine his favorites list and honorable mentions, we have 5 in common. So I think from him, I'm going to grab On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous because I love Ocean Vuong. But also I might try out Memorial. Of our 5 in common, like these are all-time favorites of mine, like My Heart is a Chainsaw, so I had to include it. Somebody else who had My Heart is a Chainsaw in their favorites is Books and Lindsay. And if you look at this stack, like there are so many of my favorites here. And then she also did an honorable mentions one. And I think we have 11 things in common. So like this is officially top my list is Lindsay. So what I can choose from is there's a little bit of romance, some sad things, but seeing as the thing we most have in common is weirdness, I do have Nothing to See Here on my TBR shelf. So this one is automatically chosen for me. And then we have Evie Bookish, who has Sea of Tranquility and the Hacienda and My Heart is a Chainsaw and the Pallbearers Club. If somebody put the Pallbearers Club in their favorites, like we automatically are aligned in our taste. And Lessons in Chemistry is here, which is intriguing. But The Other Side of Night, for some reason, just sounds like this weird little horror, little sci-fi, just strangeness that I want to go into. I like the idea of picking up one of these books knowing absolutely nothing. So that's what I'm going to pick for that. The person with the most consistent reading taste to me who I get so many recommendations from is Adriana. And she posted a story a little while ago that I screenshotted of favorites. I'm not sure if she's planning on doing like a favorites post in her feed anytime soon. But in her story, she had Sea of Tranquility, Migrations, Out There, Luster, How High We Go in the Dark, and We Spread. And Adriana has been trying to get me to read Severance for a while. I do own it, and it was actually recommended to me directly by her multiple times, including in the like read 12 books by 12 friends. I asked for ideas and she sent one in. I can't totally remember what this one is about, so that's the perfect way to go into it. And then lastly, I just need to highlight my friend Justin because this is the most books I have in common with anybody. We also have 11 in common. And I wish that I had saved Legends and Lattes for this video because I could have read it for multiple people, but I have read absolutely all of his top 12 and I've loved 11 out of the 12. So I need to go to his page and find something else that he gave a high rating so I can make sure that our aligned taste is also highlighted here. Let's see, House of Hunger got 4 out of 5. I've read that. Daphne, 4 out of 5, read that. The Hacienda was a 5 out of 5. Magic Lies and Deadly Pies, that's a 5. Small Favors I read. He gave that a 4. Mary Okay, Mary got a 4 out of 5. So I'm going to consider this one of Justin's honorable mentions. Since I'm already reading it, we're also reading it for this. So that is all of the booktubers and all of the bookstagrammers who I'm going to at least try the first chapter of their favorites. I think there was 22. I'm committing to finishing 15. What I like to do is have various booktubers, ones that I've mentioned and ones that I haven't, introduce the books in these segments. So there's more people for you to see and check out and know exist on BookTube if you need to find some more people to follow. So let's have a couple people introduce Lovelight Farms first, because this is what I'm going to start with before the snow melts.
This is a holiday romance set on a Christmas tree farm. I love the chemistry and the history that you can feel between the two main characters. They've known each other for like 10 years.
Friends to Lovers Supremacy in Lovelight Farms by BK Borison. She decides to apply for this like social media competition that will hopefully bring a lot of publicity to the tree farm. She decides to enlist the help of her long-term best friend Luca, and he is going to pretend to be her boyfriend.
So our main character's name is Stella. She goes by Lala, which I obviously love. I thought this would take me so much longer to read, but I am absolutely flying through it past the halfway point, and I think this is my first like friends to lovers that I'm enjoying. A big appeal for me with this trope is that it lacks miscommunication, which is like everybody's biggest gripe in a romance book. These people know each other so well that they don't waste any time like trying to figure out what the other one is saying. You know each other's humor, you know each other's insecurities, so when one of them is like, no, I don't want you to come to my family's big event, the other person already knows that by that they mean I don't want to burden you with that. I don't want you to feel obligated to attend that. That's just one example of the conversations these two have had as they're building their fake relationship for this contest. And if it was a brand new relationship, there'd be a lot of inner turmoil that we'd be wading through. But rather than spending time doing that, we are right into the thick of things with them thinking they might have feelings for each other while they're fake dating. And as they have to make their relationship look real, everybody around them is saying things like, oh, we knew you two would eventually get together. And it's making them think like, oh, if everyone else wants us to get together, like maybe we should be. Why haven't we been this whole time? Once again, the word comedy being right on the title. This is not a comedy. Nothing funny is happening. It's just nice and sweet. And steamy, there was a handful of non-cringy sex scenes, which I appreciate. I think I'm gonna give it like a 3.75 at the end of the day. It reminded me of my feelings towards Emily Henry's storylines and writing. Doesn't quite make it to a 4. I understand why other people would like it or why other people would love it. The characters don't have the most personality, but it is just a really simple, nice story. There are things working against the farm as far as income. Maybe there's somebody sabotaging things. There's a little mystery running through it. But all in all, I didn't pull out my little annotation pack one time. There was nothing to highlight, nothing to note, nothing that I wanted to like pull out as far as a quote goes to share or reflect on ever. It was nice, simple writing to follow. The main character is just like a nice girl, thinks the best of everybody. The love interest is kind and thoughtful and just fully into the relationship right from the jump. What I do like about this is sometimes small town romances feel obligatory and they feel like a last resort, like, well, we're just two people in this small town, who are we ever gonna date? We might as well date each other. And it didn't really feel like that. They definitely had a connection. You could see their long history together. I liked it. I would recommend it to people who are just looking for this nice, light, seasonal romance.
The next book I have is called Finna. This woman is looking for her grandma because her grandma went missing, and it turns out that this store has a portal that opens every few years, and her grandma wandered into that portal. So now she has to go into this portal. She's also going in with her ex-partner. They just broke up. It was just like sci-fi. It was like really good. It reminded me of like Black Mirror.
So I just stopped at the library and they had a couple things, but I actually decided to test out the audiobook of some of these last night, and Fina is only a couple hours long, so I kicked off that and I learned via the audiobook it's pronounced Fina. And it's like this device that helps navigate these portals. It's not like some random person went into a portal and they showed up somewhere else and nobody knows about it. Like, these wormholes are well known, and the IKEA type store even has like instructional videos of how to get through these wormholes. So I'm already halfway through and I have a bunch of errands to run, so I have no doubt I'm going to finish the audiobook today. Actually, like pretty quickly here because I'm listening on double speed. I love the premise of this so much because it's like so satirical almost, the idea that the customer is always right, and so right that you have to chase their missing grandmother through these portals. Like, you will do anything to satisfy your customer. All right, we have the first 5-star of the video, hopefully many to come. I have the same feeling when I finished like The Test by Sylvan Newell and The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Today Thompson, where it's like, can 120-page sci-fi really get 5 stars? But it just feels right. I love how this ended. I feel like it packed in so many things for being such a short book. They traveled to multiple different places together. There was such an adventure. There was also these conversations about their relationship. They're both coming to terms with their relationship ending, and Jules is dealing with people at work misgendering them and not respecting their pronouns. Ava is struggling with just like having this job and working the same job, feeling respected at work, feeling like people appreciate her time. I would most recommend this to people who work like on the floor stocking type of jobs, because I feel like the dynamics are really relatable between all of these coworkers. And also it's this escapist type of story where you get out of your daily routine. And I really just love a story like this where people see the types of worlds and lives that are out there for them, but it's also about accomplishing a goal and feeling like your life means something. I mean, that's a lot to give this book credit for saying. It's more of just like a silly, fun story, but it has a lot of great conversations. And yeah, definitely a 5-star. We trust Mayana forever and always. Now, last stop is the bookstore to see what else I can gather. So now I have the stack from my own TBR. I have a stack from the library. I have a couple more coming from the library, and I had to make the decision of which ones to purchase. So I just went to the bookstore and I decided to commit to my reading goal of the year to read the first 25 pages before committing to a book. So I grabbed the remaining 4, I sat down, I read the first couple chapters of all of them, and as you can see, I bought all of them. So I haven't deleted anything from my list because they really all were equally intriguing. So I don't know where to go from here. I'm thinking Black Cake because I'm very intrigued and I don't want to forget the setup of it when I pick it back up again.
Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkinson. This one follows these 2 siblings,
Benny and Byron, who are coming together after being estranged for many years. And their mother, Eleanor, leaves them a recording explaining her life story.
The chapters aren't numbered, but I read the first couple sections. We've been introduced to both of the twins, and there was a point that I wanted to highlight right at the end here, where the idea of their mother's message has already been introduced, but they're meeting with this person, and he said something about how do you make a map of someone's life? The borders people draw between themselves, the scars left along the ground of one's heart. What will Byron have to say about that once he and his sister have heard their mother's message? And like, how ominous. We've been introduced to the idea of their mother's message that they're going to get to listen to. Do they want to listen to it or not? When are they going to? What's contained in it? I got to the halfway point last night and I woke up today just itching to get back into this. I love trusting booktubers. This is excellent. It is slower paced. I think it's confusing for the first third, but once you understand what's going on, which would kind of be a spoiler, like it all makes sense and everything's cool. I'm just impressed with how well paced this is for being a debut. There's kind of a story within the story, and every time that ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, the interlude that comes after doesn't take too long to get back into the story. But the moments that the story pauses, it is just the perfect timing that leaves you with this anger and this sadness for these characters, but it doesn't feel like gratuitous because of where the scenes end. I feel like I won't be able to talk about the plot any further, so it's just going to be about the writing, which I think is impeccable. The afternoon definitely got away from me yesterday, but I wrapped up Black Cake today and I'm giving it 4 stars. I think I expected a little more of an impact at the ending, and that just left me feeling like slightly unsatisfied. Though the book itself is really good. You really are just navigating these different storylines with different people in this family, breaking apart, coming back together. I love Black Cake as this metaphor because there are so many things that you can find referenced in here. So like how the family is like the black cake because it is special and it is something you need to put time and energy into to get what you want out of it. The idea that it's these melding of ingredients, just like a family. Also that like sometimes you don't really know the origin of different foods. You think it might be from one country, or different countries make it differently, and thinking you know for certain where something is from, but finding out that it might be from somewhere else originally, that feels like what the story is doing. You don't know what your parents have been through. They might have lived multiple lives before having you. I'm really trying hard to keep all of these clips like 2 to 3 minutes for each book because I am reading so many. There's going to be an extended vlog for channel members where I do some decision making throughout that I don't need to spend time doing like here. I'm going to be doing various try a chapter moments in between the reads where I decide what I'm going to be reading. Right now I'm going to read the first chapter of each of like the mystery thriller books that I have. Hopefully this will help me cull the list a little bit, but I'll come back to you when I've made my choice.
Next we have The Push by Ashley Audrain. It's about this woman who doesn't really know if she wants to be a mom, but her husband really wants kids, so they end up having a daughter, and just immediately she does not feel a bond with her daughter.
But it feels like she's the only one that sees these things out of her daughter, so she doesn't know if her daughter was just like born this way or if her daughter's acting this way because of her relationship with her. The last line of this book had me about to throw this across the room.
It's one of those books where even up till the very last sentence, you don't know what is the truth.
So I did decide on The Push. The first chapter was intriguing to me. The other person who was just featured, Bria, just posted her favorites video today, and she had 5 in common with me. One of them that I haven't read it is The Push, so now I'm reading this for like extra reasons, and I feel like I have to commit to it. Even though 50 pages in, I am struggling. I know the story is going to be about more than just like having a baby, but right now I'm so in that I want to DNF it. It's talking way too much about the hours of the baby crying and her being miserable and her nipples falling off, and this part where she said her day was bookend by him leaving for work and arriving back home again, and all she was responsible for was keeping that baby alive until he got home. It just brings back a little too much for me. I'm curious to know if the people who love this, if it's everyone or if it's specific groups of people. Like, do mothers love this? Do they love being reminded of this? Do they find it triggering? Or is it mainly enjoyed by people who aren't mothers and feel like this confirms their suspicion that the newborn time is miserable? Or is it people who want children who like want to normalize that having a newborn is miserable? But I'm sure the book is going to turn into something else in a second, so I want to get to that. It is 10 hours later. I'm getting through it very slowly, but I am now at like 200 of 300 pages. First, I know this isn't technically a mystery thriller. I was just putting it in that category to try to make something fun and a way to choose the next read. It's like a family drama, which I often enjoy. I think I get the intention of it highlighting cycles of abuse. It still makes me extremely uncomfortable listening to the descriptions of the neglect of this infant, and then the infant getting described as like having a temper. Obviously, this young girl does evolve into having actually concerning behavior. I don't like evil child stories. I didn't know that would be like the main focus of this. It's been pretty much the same note throughout. I would DNF, but I'm intrigued by like what the twist reveal is going to be. People have said that like even up until the last line, it's going to surprise you. I'm hoping that means that the author is misleading us in a certain way, which is always a fun reveal to have. So I'll get through a chunk and then we can react together. Ooh, what an awkward position to be in. Because I'm reading people's favorite book. But this is the book that you guys are freaking out about? I don't get it. I'll just chalk it up to it not being my type of story, so I wasn't interested the entire time. And like there wasn't a reveal that I was, I guess, like anticipating based on people's enjoyment of this. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm into some family drama. I'm into toxic mother-daughter relationships. Maybe I'm just not into this type of exploration, this pace. This was a dull book, but it's doing something for a lot of people, so kudos to her. 2 stars.
Severance by Ling Ma. It's about a woman who works in an office in like a corporate job, and the world is basically falling apart around her. There's a huge pandemic and she continues to just carry on as normal.
Today I'm going to attempt to read 3 books. These are all the shortest things from my giant stack of books, and I think I can do it. I'm already 4 chapters into Severance, and I got this from Instagram from Adriana, so I don't have anybody pitching the book, which is good because I don't really know what it's about. So we're gonna go from this, which is a little weird, to this, which is a little weird, and then probably we're gonna cry at the end of the day. I'm also gonna use this book for my book charm pictures for me and my mommy's Etsy shop. So in this book, our main character's name is Candace, And I think we're like before and after she finds out about this pandemic that hits New York City. The book started with saying something really beautiful about like New York being one of the only places that everybody is so familiar with before they move there. It worded it much more eloquently than me. It was talking about romanticizing, glamorizing New York. She has like a boring kind of life, and then when the pandemic hits, we're also in a timeline after that where she is traveling with all of these survivors. There's only like 9 people, and they're traveling to find a safe place to be, I guess. It feels like a pretty slice of life kind of story. We're talking about really mundane, everyday things, and I don't know if that's going to continue. Probably. I don't know if we're going to get to know all of these people who are traveling together, or if it's pretty much Candace being the focus. Did I even say the title out loud? This is Severance by Ling Ma. I think it came out in 2017 or 2018, which is just wild considering the topics, and obviously pandemics have been happening forever, but there's some weird on the nose things. It's funny because I wouldn't consider myself somebody who goes out of their way to find epidemic type books, but with my love of Station 11 and then more recently How High We Go in the Dark and Sea of Tranquility, this as a recommendation totally makes sense. And so far, I love it, and I just wanted to read the ending with you again because just like the last book, I heard that the ending is very divisive. And I think these last 30 pages will decide if this is a 4 or a 5 for me. It's going very well. Based on the title, like, it is very much about this woman's job and her working through like the end of the world. While it is an end of the world as we know it kind of story, it also feels very non-urgent. Like we're focusing on very slow, mundane tasks. And it's just so funny to me to think that this is labeled as satire, and it's focusing on things like there's this epidemic and people have to wear masks, and the people who are against wearing masks, the people who want to wear masks, and how we will commodify anything, we will capitalize on anything. And so this New York Fashion Week is turned into a mask wearing fashion show where the masks aren't even useful, they're just for a fashion statement. And like, little did this author know how relevant that would be in like reality. Like, this isn't satire. It's about how people respond or don't respond to a global pandemic. My favorite thing that I highlighted in here is just the very real conversation between 2 people. One character saying the state media in China controls the optics of this, so we don't know the real statistics. Maybe they don't want to incite mass panic, but I'll bet it's also because they don't want foreign investors to pull out of their economy. They need to save face. And then our main character says, that sounds like a conspiracy. One of Jonathan's constant critiques of me was that I didn't keep up with the news enough, but I wondered if he wasn't overinformed, deep diving into obscure articles and message boards, seeing connections that weren't there. And it's just 2 very contrasting and real responses to the global epidemic. Okay. I think I understand I understand why people might not like how it ends. However, the ending is perfectly in line with the story. I guess when you hear that it's just about one woman and a pandemic, you think there's going to be a certain type of arc, but it really is just, I think, intentionally irritating to read, like with its lack of quotation marks, with its lack of explaining what year you're in or when time has moved. And similarly to Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam, another 5-star for me. This is 5 stars. It focuses on weird things. When you might want to be hearing about certain activities or progress, you are in these weird descriptions and storylines instead. But that was absolutely perfect for me. Fantastic recommendation. Could not be happier. I'm moving on to Foe now, which I also like don't know the description of because it was just in Gabby's honorable mentions.
I also loved Foe by Ian Reid. This was amazing.
So quick title card there. This is 250 pages and there's a lot of white space frequently, so I think it should be a pretty quick read. I know there's a man and a woman, and the man goes off to do a job and she is left behind with maybe another version of her husband to spend time with her. I don't know if that means a literal other person or a clone or an AI or a figment of her imagination. Like, I don't know. Got to the 100-page mark. It's actually the introduction to part 2. So who knows what's going to happen from here. But we've had this man show up at Junior and Hen's house, and Junior's being invited on this trip. And I thought that it would be most of the story like from his wife and who she's living with now that he's gone. But rather this entire section and continuing on into part 2, it seems that he's still preparing for his life away. Since I'm thinking of ending things 3 stars, I think partially because I predicted the ending. I do wonder if I've predicted what I think is going on, which is I made an assumption about 30 pages in, and I can't wait to see if that's true or not. But if I guessed what's going on, is that going to ruin the book? Like, does the enjoyment hinge on being surprised by anything? Or is it going to be a more ambiguous story? Because a lot of times Ian Reid like doesn't really answer your questions at the end. It's just left for you to ponder. Right now we're just spending a lot of time with this couple and them not really understanding what their life looks like after he leaves and goes on this trip. I have thoughts. I have many thoughts. I'm having a good time. Very fun to read. Hey, babe.
Yeah.
It was the exact story I predicted.
Really?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not getting to the 3rd book. Well, maybe that's not obvious to you. It's past midnight. I really need to go to sleep. This, I want to like respect and give a 4. I just can't stop thinking about how incredible it would have been if this was a shocking twist, and I would have given it 5 stars. But I can still appreciate what it was. Very much felt like a Black Mirror episode. I know a lot of short sci-fi just gets put in that category, but this definitely felt that way. It was very focused on the psychological aspect of humanity, just very internal, much like all of his other books. I'm sure it's saying a lot of things that if I stopped and thought about them, they would come to me. But I guess one is like, what would you do with your marriage and your life if you knew that your days were numbered? Like, how would you treat your spouse? How would you mentally, physically prepare for being apart? And then, I don't know, something about reality and is there any such thing as a unique experience? Good book, good recommendation. I am an Ian Reid fangirl. I wish this was like the first thing that I'd read from him before I expected twists and turns.
The Dating Playbook. So this book is the 2nd book in the Boyfriend Project like series. There's 3 girls. They were all dating the same man, and they all realized they was dating the same man, and they confronted this man. So those 3 girls all became besties, and every book is following one of those 3 girls.
In this story, we're following Taylor, who's one of the 3 women, and her situation is she doesn't really know what she's doing with her life. If she wants to go back to school, if she wants to have a job with children, if she wants to have a job with nutrition and fitness. Right now she's doing these exercise classes, little group fitness activities, and this man shows up to one and he invites her to be personal trainer full-time. He wants to get back into the NFL. He really liked her workout. He thinks that she can challenge him, and also she's not like in the NFL world, so while they're training together, nobody will know that he is trying to get back into the NFL, because that's something he wants to keep to himself until he really believes that he can potentially do it. They kind of quickly fall into a fake dating scenario. They're getting feelings for each other, but she has a reputation to keep as well. She doesn't want people to just think that he hired her because they're dating. Their public image gets a little bit messy of if they want people to think that they're working together or dating or both. So there's a lot to navigate, as well as her personal like career decisions. You know what? I'm giving this one 4 stars. It's the same rating I gave The Boyfriend Project. I can't wait to read the 3rd one. It just sounds so fun. I was already interested in it, and now I'm more encouraged to continue. It feels wrong giving this the same rating because the relationship is without a doubt more developed and you learn more about him, and there's just more depth overall. But I don't know that this author's writing could lead me to a 5-star personally. Though I will say what I find incredibly well written are the steamier scenes. I'll give it that. There was like a wilderness survival element to this that was really fun. If you know me, I love camping stories, outdoor activities. There was a little bit of it as she was trying to prepare for a workout class she was preparing. It is a lot about her own personal development, but he is there every step of the way. It talks about his history with the sport, his worry about potential injury, her trying to prevent that, her potential learning disability that she's never like had anybody look into before. There's a good amount of family stuff involved, and they both helped each other through various things throughout the book. Okay, I'm talking myself into a 4.25 because it's either that or I have to lower the rating of this one. It also had a good amount of the other 2 women in it. Not so much that it felt fan servicey, like seeing the first couple and how in love they are and constantly bringing them into the story, but it reflected on their relationship a little bit, and then we also got an idea of what London's life could potentially look like in the third book. Her friends are more successful in her eyes than she is, and she's kind of bumbling around in life not knowing what she wants, but by the end of the story she makes a lot of realizations that I think were really well done. It didn't make me feel a lot. It wasn't super heartfelt or super funny, but it was just a good time throughout. A good romance for me is hard to find, so glad Kenya mentioned this one.
In Every Morning, The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman, we have a granddad who has Alzheimer's, and we're going through pretty much the end of his life. And it's like, it's short, so it's got that going for it, but it did make me cry.
Since I've already read something nice today, I think it's time for me to get into the sad story. Considering the other 2 books I read this year have Alzheimer's as a plot point and made me cry, I don't see how this one wouldn't. I have myself set up. I'm in a good mental space. I have chocolate to eat afterwards. I've got a box of tissues beside me. My hair is out of my face so it doesn't get wet by my tears. And let's begin. Yeah, just as I thought. Screw all of you for reading this and recommending it. You know, there are people out there, this is all they want to read. It's just like sad, beautiful books and like just torture themselves. This is about a grandpa and his grandson, and it's him remembering the love of his life, how they fell in love and how she died, and him like wanting to reconnect with his son because he wasn't the most involved father, and he's making up for that as a grandfather, but now he's losing his memory and he can't remember everybody. This topic is just like really close to me personally, so you know, 2 pages in it was already saying things that had an impact and made me sad.
The Honeys by Ryan Lasala. Mars is grieving his sister's death. They were very, very close. And every summer his sister would go to this camp, and he has a feeling that this group of girls called the Honeys at the summer camp had something to do with his sister's murder.
I have a lot of errands to run and driving to do today, so I asked my channel members to recommend me an audiobook based on the remaining TBR that I have. I wanted to know if any of the audiobooks were better than the physical reading experience, and a lot of people said the Honeys, and I understand why now. I'm already like halfway through, and there are little sound effects constantly throughout the story. There's like screams in the woods. There's just the sound of buzzing bees. If you're somebody who gets easily distracted while you're listening to audiobooks, I feel like this would be a really good one to pick up, because even the beginning of each chapter has a little musical intro, and it's really an attention grabber and keeps you like on track. So I'm liking it so far. It's definitely horror. I find some YA horror leans more contemporary, a little bit of like fantasy feeling. This is horror. Like, it feels like horror. There's already been an attack, a death, an injury. There is a looming threat. Mars gets to the school pretty quickly, is integrated into all of the activities and the little societies, definitely being ostracized. People are leaving them out. Some people are bringing him in. My final rating of the Honeys is gonna have to be a 3.75. I found that this had a lot in common with a lot of the younger horror that I read that I give 3 stars. It almost had like the folksy, outdoorsy vibes of Ghostwood Song. As it devolved into weirdness, it reminded me a little bit of Catherine House. Even though it's more of a camp than an academy, it did have the wealthy vibes that As I Descended gave me. And then it had the grief-driven investigation into a loved one's murder and like integrating yourself into the life that they lived before that Summer Sons has. Catherine House wasn't a 3-star, it was a 5-star, but that's the one that it is least similar to. There is this idea of group thought and this crew of the honeys being so intrinsically linked that there are other books on my shelf that I would like to point to, but I don't want to come across like this is like Bunny or We Ride Upon Sticks or The Wild Ones, because it's not, but it does give those Coven kind of vibes. The atmosphere and the descriptions were fantastic. There was this game that the girls would play with tiles and I loved it so much, and then all of the descriptions of food and honey, and there was a bit of body horror and just the woods, like the atmosphere was great. I would probably give the first 100 pages of this 5 stars and then the last 50 pages 4 stars, but the middle was like a 2. I don't know if he knew what he wanted to do with it. Much like Black Cake, another recommendation from this booktuber, it has a lot of metaphor, but it's not really different metaphors, it's just kind of hammering home the same thing. Meanwhile, Black Cake was used in so many different reference points. So the symbolism was a little too heavy. I don't know that this main character could really carry this story. We needed a little bit more of him and not just how they reacted to various scenarios. In fact, I don't think any of the characters were quite strong enough for me. All in all, it was a good read. If you love YA horror, I don't see why you wouldn't love this one.
The Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman, but my favorite is the second book, which is The Man Who Died Twice. And you're basically following in this sleepy, peaceful retirement village. You're following 4 unlikely friends who every Thursday they get together in the puzzle room to try and solve unsolved murders.
The lighting is a little bit questionable here. I'm currently reading The Thursday Murder Club. That's not better. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm 100 pages in and I'm having a really good time. I feel like some people warned me that this was very British, and I didn't know if that meant just like culturally I wouldn't understand things or slang or what. And I think it's like it's very British humor, but I find that like Canadian humor is closer to British humor than American humor. So I'm very much chuckling along, having a great time. We have been introduced to everyone in the Thursday Murder Club and the crime itself, why these people have decided to investigate it, but also they're just a lot more, I think, conniving than I thought. I thought it would be kind of a silly little side project that they're just up to, but no, they are inserting themselves into this investigation, like talking to people actually involved in the investigation and making sure that they have all of the information that they need to solve the case. It's probably just that I haven't read very many books with a big group of elderly characters and their banter, so I only have like one reference point, so it's reminding me a lot of erotic stories for Punjabi widows and how all of those women got together and it was all about gossiping and the funny back and forth that they had. Just the way that they're introducing themselves is very fun. They're talking about who they like within the group and they're like, oh, that's this person, nobody likes her. And then she's like, yeah, actually I am pretty annoying. It makes sense why nobody likes me. You just get to a point in your life where honesty is all there is. Like there's no point in doing anything, being sneaky or not being forthcoming. Like, let's not waste time. Let's just put it all out there. So it's fun to follow so far. All of you know my reading taste so well. So everybody who told me when I picked this up that it wasn't going to be for me, you get all of the praise that you were correct. I'm not going to rate this because I don't feel like I finished it. I found myself glazing over a lot. I had to go back, I had to read passages. I was keeping such detailed notes and none of them are about anything that I was enjoying. They're just, this person did this person did that. One of them literally says, character name here, did something, ... bad, ... I kept going back and rereading passages because I realized at the end of a chapter I wasn't really grasping what was going on. There are so many characters and there are so many things happening, and we all know that like pure mystery isn't my thing, but it is so good for me to pick up books that I don't think I'm gonna like because I am consistently wrong about my reading tastes. I found all of these characters really interesting, compelling, and charming, but then there was just too many people and all the connections. I think I was focused too much on remembering them all that I just wasn't really enjoying myself. I'm actually gonna call this a DNF because I feel like I was skimming. The first 100 pages really worked, and then 100 pages I was like, okay. And then I was like, you know, Richard Osman is going to give me a page in here where he just connects all of the dots and he explains everything. And then he did that. It was literally one portion that was like, this person did this because this person did this, and then this happened because of this, and the mystery is solved. I totally see why this is so many people's favorite series, and I think it's a fun time, especially the style this is written in from a character like writing the entries. This book definitely does not need my promotion in any way, so I'm cool calling it a DNF even though I finished it, because I don't think that I could accurately talk about this and pitch it ever. I did give the audiobook a try and it also just did not hold my attention, so I don't know what's been up with me. I read a whole other book in between. That one went fine. So I thought maybe it was just me and my focus, but no, it's just the book didn't do it for me. I'm so sorry to everyone who wanted me to love this. But let's move on to the next. Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson I bought last year at a thrift store. All I knew about it is about this woman who gets tasked with taking care of these children who spontaneously combust. Now I'm 60 pages in and I'm so glad that this is on someone's favorites because it is so funny. It's such a quick read too, so I'm going to finish this within a matter of hours. But even the setup of how this woman gets involved in this family, these two characters, Lillian and Madison, met in boarding school. They came from very different walks of life, different families. Now later in life, one of them has two stepkids who catch on fire. She's bringing them into her home for the first time and she needs someone to care for them full time because she's not able to, doesn't want to, and the other one goes along with it. Just the introduction to this manor that she lives in, I was highlighting every time. It made me laugh. Just getting used to living somewhere with all of these people who work there, kind of being welcomed into part of the staff, and then getting to know these children's condition. And she is tasked with like keeping them calm so they don't catch on fire. I was a little bit worried that I was reading another evil child book, but they're not evil. They just accidentally catch on fire, and it's kind of sweet and wholesome, the little family that they create. They're pretty untrusting at first. They're apprehensive of who is looking out for their best interest. They've had an unstable upbringing, and I think there's a lot of metaphor in here. But Lillian's upbringing has also been a little unstable, and she has to come to terms with things that happen to her and the life that she wants to create for herself. And it's funny. We got another 5-star, my friends. I just knew in the first couple chapters that this was going to be the type of book for me. Something about the writing style really worked. I don't want to sell it wrong. It's not a weird book. It's not a weird plot. It's not weird writing. It's just this concept itself is weird. This is a main character type I really enjoy reading. She has a little bit of a cold, maybe cynical take on life. She is a little apathetic, doesn't really know what she's doing. It reminded me a little bit of the vibe of the main character in Luster, and also Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. And then the like, is it or isn't it a toxic friendship vibe of So Happy for You. But then because of the nature of these children and the kind of found family, I wish I had a better comp, but I will say it's a bit of House in the Cerulean Sea vibes with a sprinkle of Firestarter. It's a little pointless, a little plotless, which is my favorite thing. It's about loyalty and trust. It's an incredibly fast read at 250 pages. I would definitely recommend it. I mean, it is a New York Times bestseller and it has a high Goodreads rating. I don't feel like this is a book for everyone, so I don't want to say I would broadly recommend it, but it's really good. I feel like there are a lot of great takeaways. It's just not impressive in any way. It's just a silly slice of life.
We have Unlikely Animals by Annie Hartnett. You're following this woman named Emma Starling who was born in this small town, and she's very well known in her small town because she is said to be this natural born healer. So she followed this path in life where she decided to be a doctor because that's sort of the path that everyone assumed that she would take since she has this natural born ability to heal people. She secretly drops out of school, and now she is returning home to her small town to help take care of her father who is nearing the end of his life. Also, one of her friends from when she used to live here has gone missing, and so her and her dad are teaming up to try to find her friend as well.
What's so interesting about this is I have read the storyline so many times of a woman moving away for work or school and coming back to her small town and reassessing what she wants out of life and her parents' expectations on her. But since it adds that little magical element into it, that trope is turned upside down a little bit because it's like, should I feel obligated because of my ability to now have this job? Something Ashley didn't include in her description that I got to find out for myself, but it is in the like synopsis, is that the dead like of this local cemetery are the ones leading us through the story. And the book opens up with like, we are those in the cemetery. It goes through all of the people throughout the book who are in the cemetery when they died. So it's got a kind of first person plural perspective, and they're just using the town as entertainment. All the family drama, all of the tragedies going on, they're commenting on it. I will say it took me about 100 pages to really get into the story. I considered DNFing it a couple times, but I then got really into the writing, and I'm nearing the end now. It's reminding me a bit of the writing style of Jonathan Tropper, following these wacky characters all in a family while there's heavy things going on. There is an opioid crisis. There is missing people. There are people who have been injured or murdered. There's this man is like on his deathbed. He's approaching death. But then him hallucinating all of these animals just adds such a quirky, fun vibe to it, and I'm having a really good time. I'm reading so many books in this video that I'm just trying to find new interesting places to film, and I mean this is just literally facing the other direction, but now you can see that I left up some of my Christmas decor, so please ignore that. I decided to keep it up year round the same way that some people leave their Christmas lights on outside all year, which is also my house. I'm giving this a 4. I thought it was really good. I like all the things that it was saying. It has so many things that I enjoy. It wasn't narrated by death, which is something that I really like, but it had similar vibes. Also, I just love the direct-to-reader style that's like a little tongue-in-cheek. This character we just introduced, remember her name because she'll be important later. Like that kind of perspective, how the narrator is playing with the reader and it's breaking the fourth wall. The author took a little bit of history with Mr. Ernest Harold Baines, who inspired Dr. Dolittle, and fictionalized his story and made him his own ghost. And as this man is hallucinating different people and animals, there's also some real life inspiration, and that's just really fun. The characters are quirky. It's another not a lot happens kind of book with a little bit of weirdness. Just such a good time.
Know My Name by Chanel Miller. She was known as Emily Doe in a Stanford sexual assault case. Chanel is clearly a very, very intelligent woman. The way she is able to articulate her thoughts and memories and emotions, it is an extremely difficult read given the subject matter, so tread with caution.
Naturally, throughout this process, more favorites lists have been posted. My friend Georgia just posted hers, and we have 5 things in common, and Know My Name is also on her list. And I just feel encouraged by the fact that 2 Australians or 2 just non-Americans have given this 5 stars. Not that I thought the impact would only be for Americans, but as this crime occurred and the subsequent trial, I believe was such a part of American media, I thought maybe you needed to have some background information going into this, and this would be kind of a follow-up. But this is laying out the situation very well. It's incredibly well written. As someone who's never really followed a trial in the news or consumed crime-based media, I knew Brock Turner's name but could not have told you when or what the crime he committed was or the results of the trial, but Chanel lays everything out incredibly well, gives us all the background information, which I should have assumed that she would do. So it is a balance between her personal account and a harrowing exploration of her sexual assault and rape culture, but also it does fully go through the court proceedings, the trial, the aftermath, and what is, I'm guessing, broadly already part of the American public consciousness. I've been slowly listening to the audiobook. I'm assuming I'm going to take quite a few more days to go through it. I want to buy myself a copy so I can highlight things because I've been tabbing so many powerful statements about how, you know, the public has perceived this crime, how having a boyfriend even makes the crime different in people's eyes. In the same way that, like, if a man asks you out and you say, no, I'm not interested, that is taken more personally than saying, no, I have a boyfriend, because they respect that there's a man involved in the second case and will most likely leave you alone as opposed to the former. But she was saying at the hospital, it never occurred to me that it was important I was dating someone. I'd only been thinking of me and my body. It should have been enough to say I did not want a stranger touching my body. It felt strange to say I have a boyfriend, which is why I did not want Brock touching my body. I highly recommend the audiobook. It's obviously hard to get through as the physical reading experience would be, but I just think it's important to really witness what she's talking about, because that's the whole point of this book, is that she was anonymous at one point, chose not to be, and she has spent so much time needing to humanize herself throughout this experience, and that's what this book itself is. This has one of the highest average ratings on Goodreads. I don't need to be the one to tell you that this is incredibly done, but obviously this was a 5-star. It was incredibly infuriating to read and did exactly what it intended to do. It humanized this woman who shouldn't need to be humanized. It highlighted sexual assault statistics and so many issues within society, and also highlights so many issues within the legal system. Even 20 pages in, this sets it up so well. When she's discovered and is getting interviewed, she's just sitting there and telling the truth. And she says here, I didn't know at this point, like, that money could impact the situation. I didn't know that if a woman was drunk when the violence occurred, she wouldn't be taken seriously. I didn't know if he was drunk when the violence occurred, people would offer him sympathy. I didn't know that my loss of memory would become his opportunity. I didn't know that being a victim was synonymous with not being believed. I had no idea what a preliminary hearing was or what a trial actually meant. Because these aren't things that you should have to think about when you are just telling the truth and your account of a crime committed against you. And it's so ridiculous, the things that she had to go through and relive and be coached on how to speak in a trial, how to memorize your own account so you don't accidentally say the wrong thing, how when you are being, I don't even, cross-examined or whatever, that people can phrase things in a way that makes you look like you're lying or that sets you up to fail. And beyond saying all of these important things and being so vulnerable, it's just incredibly written. The way that this is structured, the impact that certain paragraphs have, the ways that certain conversations come back around, it's not something that she should have ever had to go through or ever had to write about, but obviously it's so valuable to so many people that she did. Feels weird to transition from this into something silly next, but that's what we're doing.
Vanessa Jared's got a man who is just recently divorced, and this guy who's from a small town, he's a sheriff, he ends up knocking on her door because his sister is marrying her fiance. So he's trying to convince her to come back to their hometown to convince his sister not to marry him.
This is what I'm reading today. I'm hoping to get to 2 books today to stay on track because we still have a lot to get through, but I've made some decisions already. I'm not the most in the mood for romance right now, and this one, the beginning didn't work for me, so I'm committing to this one. I'm 100 pages in now. I've ditched The Family Game, but I think I'll return to it. I think with the lack of a huge success with my other YA horror, between these two, I'm gonna go with this one. And then I read the opening of these two, and I've decided on The Ocean Vuong because I have, you know, experience with this author. So maybe these two will get done today. And then I still have 2 weirder books. But I feel like something fun and light paired with something more moody is The Move. I'm not fully invested yet, but they only just are getting together at this point, so I'll see if I like their dynamic. It's reminding me a little bit of Talia Hibbert, with the man being very obsessed and into her and fantasizing about her really early on, which I know is like a good thing and everybody's into it, but it gives me the ick sometimes. Just the way characters refer to other characters, I don't know why. She's a little cringy to me, coming off a little Facebook mom. She's talking about fur babies and just, I'll get on board with the way that she talks. I'm more interested to know if we're gonna get books, like if this is gonna become a series and we're following her friends too, because that would be fun. I like them. They're all divorced and they're part of this savvy, sexy, and single club. Happy to continue reading. We'll see where it goes. I don't know what my rating for this is. It's somewhere in the 3s. And I'm in that weird predicament again where I see how these characters are good for each other. I'm happy for them. I feel like their communication was healthy. They were perfectly reasonable and communicative, and so I shouldn't take any issue with this, and so I don't. If not for reading this in the context that I am and it being recommended by who it was, I would have said I would only really recommend this for women in a similar predicament as Vanessa. You know, 40-plus-year-old divorced women who need to feel like there is love and life after divorce, and that you will find someone who values you. Because that's what the story is, and it's very heavy-handed in its messaging. At every turn, this man is perfectly lovely, and she's saying, well, I can't eat that because it has carbs, and he goes internally, she should never try to fit into this stereotypical, unattainable beauty standard. She's perfect just the way she is, and her curves and her thick thighs are what make her so beautiful. Which is a great, fantastic message. It was just a lot for me. What I will say, the steamy scenes were well done. The rest of the book, the writing didn't do much for me. The story didn't do much for me. If I had connected to the main character more, I'm sure it would have. So nobody really comes here for romance recommendations anyway, so I'll just leave it there. This is for some people. It was good for me. Switching tones completely, I'm a quarter of the way through this.
We have On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. It talks a lot about intergenerational trauma and how being an immigrant obviously has a huge influence on someone's life, but that all the trauma that you've experienced in the new country and your home country, that is passed down to your children and their children's children. It's so emotional, but it's amazing.
I knew it would be heavy because I've read Ocean Vuong's poetry before. Really appreciate this. I was gonna say it being recommended by Brandon. It wasn't. It was just a part of his favorites for the year. I'm trying to separate this from nonfiction. It feels very truthful. It is a letter to his mother who cannot read English. So it's just him exposing everything that has happened in his childhood, at least right now. We're with this character when he's very young, and it's been extremely jarring, going between the joy and the pain of growing up in this environment. We go from a scene of beautiful connection to his mother slapping him. It's very fragmented. It doesn't feel like there's a real narrative to follow. It's just bits and pieces of this character's life. It's so painful already. That's the best book that I've read so far this year. Wow, like I knew I would love it, but there's just something about a novel being written by a poet that's just extra special. It's definitely more stream of consciousness, which is very much my preference, and it uses a lot of over explanation in the writing. It's kind of just short vignettes. It reminded me a lot of Billy Ray Belcourt. It's 5 stars without a doubt. My favorite thing about this is, I think, the use of language. Like, he just has such a skill with language, but then also integrates language itself into the things that he's saying. I highlighted a lot. In Vietnamese, the word for missing someone and remembering someone is the same. I don't know how to pronounce that word or that phrase, but sometimes when you ask me over the phone the phrase, I flinch thinking you meant, do you remember me? I miss you more than I remember you. The impact of that is lost if you don't know the context. There's a lot of pain in here. Nothing could be taken from me, I thought, if I had already given it away. Sometimes being offered tenderness feels like the very proof that you've been ruined. I'm pulling out quotes because there's not really a plot to follow. He is writing this, the character, to his mother, but exploring the life that he had, the end of someone's life, like history, the war in Vietnam. But it's not like a tender letter. It is just full of his life experience, as if no one would ever read it. So there's like sexual exploits in here. And I think the jarring nature of it is my favorite thing, other than the use of language itself, because there was an entire scene of death bookended by 2 sex scenes full of deep sadness and tenderness in their own right. And like, that is reality. You don't have time to prepare yourself for death. Life just keeps on going and things just keep coming at you. Throughout the story, he's grappling with generational trauma and his sexuality. So many hard truths about the life that he's living, and it was sad and beautiful all at the same time. I don't think this is one that's gonna work for everyone, but I loved it.
Marry It by Nat Cassidy. This is a story about a woman who is premenopausal and who is basically hallucinating. She ends up getting beckoned by her ill aunt and starts uncovering some interesting connections between her past and some things that have happened in that town.
Here's where I'm at with Mary. Physically, here's where I'm at, halfway. Here's where I'm at mentally. I'm 200 pages into this book and I can't believe there's 200 more pages to go. That's not to say it's not good or that I'm not liking it. It just feels like we've had some realizations and it should be wrapping up soon. And the biggest critique that I've heard about this book is that it just drives home the same points over and over again, and it could have used some more editing. And I already feel that way only halfway in. So I'm worried about it keeping my interest for the latter half. It is definitely spooky. I wouldn't call it scary, but it has a lot of hauntings and ghosty things going on. You definitely see why this character is frightened and why she wants to find out what's happening to her. There's a lot of misogyny and ageism and sexism she's going through in these pages as well. She's going to various doctors trying to get a diagnosis, and everyone's just like, you are at an age where menopause is a thing, so everything can just be blamed on that. We don't need to look into anything further. I only just realized, having the cover in front of me, that there is a third hand coming out of the bath. Like, that's not her hand. Maybe everyone else already noticed that, but I just did. Well, I fell asleep reading last night, like book on face, woke up 50 pages from the end of Mary. It might be my body trying to tell me that it's not reasonable to read a book every single day for a month straight. Little does she know that I'm gonna try to read 2 today. Everything that I was saying about Mary being like one note and maybe it just saying the same things and doing the same things, I take it back because it has gone in a different direction. It's gotten weird. In fact, I think some of you might have warned me, if you knew that I was reading this, that this isn't a plot that I like. But I am interested to see how it's gonna end. Right now, she's talking with and spending time with a bunch of people as she discovers, you know, what her writing has to do with things. It talks about in the synopsis how she has been writing the journal that reflects this like serial killer. So it does feel like a pretty mystery heavy horror, which I'm enjoying following, like her figuring everything out. The rest of the plot, I don't know, but I'll give you my final rating in a second. I haven't committed to a rating yet, so let's look at this and figure it out. A 3.5. What I will say is I decided to listen to about an hour of this via the audiobook while I was curling my hair and doing the dishes, and I wish that I had done that the entire time because the creep factor was much more evident listening to it. I'm sure that some people may take issue with me saying that I would recommend this for beginners of horror because it really does go there, but I really do think that if you already enjoy, you know, literary fiction that's about women's issues and misogyny, then and you want to get into horror and you want it to be creepy, it's here. Mary is fighting against a lot of things in real life and in the supernatural realm, and it was a good time. I can see how this would be somebody's favorite, but I can see why it's not like a huge hit amongst all horror readers. I don't think I saw this on anybody else's favorites list this year, but maybe that's just because it's not super widely read. It only has 1,000 ratings. I find that Tor's titles, because I'm such a fan of them and I'm so aware of all the things that they are doing, I tend to have a lot of their books at the top of my mind as popular horror when it's just not. I've just seen it a lot in my feed from the publisher themselves. I had heard that this was an homage to Carrie and I really wasn't getting those vibes, but reading the author's notes, I understand where the origin story came from, and after decades of writing it, where he took the story from its roots. I really appreciate the things that the author was saying, why he wanted to tell this story, if he's the right person to tell this story. I do agree with the general consensus that it hammered home a lot of the same points a lot, so that's why my rating is where my rating is.
My favorite adult contemporary literary fiction that I loved but just didn't make the cut was Sirens and Muses, and this is by Antonia Angres.
The year is 2011 and the Occupy Wall Street movement is rapidly growing. And set against this recent history are the stories of 4 different artists at an elite college. These 4 artists' lives collide in what has become one of the best, most petty, most cruel, most horny novels I have read in so long.
I'm now 100 pages in and I am fascinated. We have these 4 characters who are mainly following, who are working students in the arts, and we're getting really well-established lives and how they all know each other. All of these people have very different lives and perspectives, but they're all kind of doing the same thing. We've got Louisa, who is a scholarship student. We have Karina, who is this prodigy. We have Robert, who is a teacher, and then Preston, who is just like really challenging a lot of ideas within the system. They all have such a complicated relationship with art, but they also love it so deeply. And for some people, that means wanting it to be free and accessible to the whole world. And for others, they want to gatekeep it. They want to keep it a world of wealth and privilege. There's already been the idea of a competition introduced, a deep dark secret of somebody's, somebody not being able to continue to afford going to this school. So I'm just interested to see like what the story is actually going to be focused on and where it's going to go from here. All right, that's 2 books in a row that have the same rating. and again, that I can understand why people love. This was on a handful of people's favorites for the year, and it totally makes sense. I think I lost a little bit of interest when the story shifted from them being in school and all of the drama there to like their lives after and instead of school. I think in order to care about that part enough, I needed to care about the characters more than I did. I think I cared about 2 out of the 4, though I found this really well written and relatively interesting. It didn't necessarily get as messy and I want to say fun. Like, this doesn't exude fun. Like, the cover doesn't give you those vibes, but for some reason I just thought maybe it would get like more fascinating than it was, which was mildly fascinating the whole time. I think everything wrapped up nicely. Objectively, I think all of the conversations that we were having in here about art and everybody's respective relationships with their own artistry and belonging within the occupation, I guess you'd call it. All of these characters going completely different directions and the way they come back together it's an interesting story to follow. It just didn't do a ton for me. If you're already interested in this story and this type of story, I think it's probably going to do exactly what you expect and you'll probably enjoy it. And I'm glad that I branched out. Now we're on to the last book.
The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy. It's the type of book that is so hard to describe because it's meant to be confusing. As a general description, it's about this father who has been separated from his son, and it tells the story of why that happened.
I did read that first chapter at the bookstore. Very interesting. I tried out the audiobook, hated it. So I'll be reading this physically tonight/tomorrow. We're about to go out to the bar with some friends, and that might evolve into the kind of night where I can't come home and reasonably read, but we'll see. I might not be updating you until tomorrow when I'm done. Ooh, we ended this video with a bang. Oh my God, 5 stars. I, on one hand, regret not filming the process of reading this because it would have been fun to see my reaction at the like reveal because I audibly went, what? But I'm also glad that I kept this reading experience just to myself because I don't want to give away like when that happened or talk too much about the plot. And if I had updated you at the midpoint, I would have told you it was really slow, which I guess I am still telling you. I think this was great. It was perfectly aligning with my tastes, but it is extremely slow. And if you remember who I pulled this one from, it was like My Heart's a Chainsaw, Paul Bearer's Club. This is for an equally niche audience. And you really need to go into it not really knowing anything except the basic premise of we're following this woman who used to be a police officer. She is no longer. She gets wrapped up in this investigation though anyway, because this married couple died. One of them via an illness and one of them via suicide. And they left behind a son, and that son is being brought into the home of another person. She has a connection to that person, and she's just trying to figure out if this child has a safe environment and what happened to his parents, because she found this ominous note that implied like one of these deaths was purposeful or somebody was in danger. It is a very slow, drawn out British mystery. So if that's something that you can enjoy, pick it up, but also if you like weird books. It definitely does something that I was not expecting, that I had just a great time uncovering, but I think that it might be a little too much for some people. And even if you predominantly read weird fiction, I don't think that this is weird enough that if you don't also enjoy a slow detective mystery, that would make up for the drawn out storyline. It was interesting to follow. The reveal was good, and it makes me want to reread the whole book. So at the end of the day, at the end of the video, at the end of this month, I read 8 5-star books. Every time I do one of these booktuber favorites, I have a higher success ratio than the time before, and I really just love following people and seeing what they love and seeing if I'll love it. I also had some 4-star reads and 3-star reads, and then some other things I didn't connect with the most, but this was a huge success in my mind, and yes, I will continue to do this every single year. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you're picking any of these up now. If you made it all the way to the end and you want me to touch on anything more specific, I am filming my monthly wrap up in a couple of days. So while these clips were intentionally clipped and short, I know that I can go into more detail. So if you want to know anything more, then leave me a question down below and I will highlight it in my wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.